You ever catch the scent of truth by accident, like fried onions on a breeze, and suddenly your whole life smells different? That was me the day I realized my husband's late closings weren't about contracts. They were about sheets. I'm Naima Caldwell, born and bred West Philly, and up until a month ago, I thought the worst thing Dorian did was leave beard trimmings in the sink like confetti after a parade. Turns out the celebration was elsewhere. It started on a nothing special Tuesday, the kind that dares the universe to ruin it. I'm 36, 12 years married, and I'd built our life like a campaign, targeted, polished, airtight. I'm a marketing director. My job is patterns, and his new habits screamed neon. Dorian, who swore chinos were church clothes, started dressing like a glossy page man. The watch, the cologne, shirts that felt like apologies you could iron. When I asked why, he said he was elevating his professional image.
Please.
The only thing rising was somebody's pulse that wasn't mine. Then came the meetings at restaurants we'd never afford on a Tuesday, the weekend walkthroughs that never produced keys, and the podcasts about authentic self that made me want to throw his phone in the schoolgirl. Authentic where exactly? Not at our dinner table. Please like, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from. But here's the thing, Dorian forgot who he married. I don't crumble easily. I investigate. I read between the lines like it's scripture. He might have thought he was slick, but I've built whole campaigns off noticing when a logo color is one shade off. So when the red flags started stacking higher than Amazon boxes at Christmas, I didn't cry. I opened my laptop. First stop, the phone bill. Before you judge, understand I pay it. That's not snooping, that's auditing. And what did I find? A digital goldmine. Hundreds of texts to a number I didn't recognize. Calls right when he was supposed to be showing properties. 45 minutes, an hour, sometimes more. Enough to birth a whole side relationship. A reverse lookup gave me the name, Simone. Of course it was Simone. A name that sounds like hoop earrings and midnight secrets. A quick LinkedIn search confirmed, 34, interior designer, owner of her own boutique firm. Her profile photo? The kind of staged perfection that whispered, I juice cleanse at sunrise. Long curls, wide smile, fake as silk flowers. Her bio? Creating beautiful spaces for beautiful souls. Apparently, my husband's body counted as one. And, plot twist, she wasn't single. Simone's husband was Khalil, graphic designer. The kind who posted black and white shots of cracked sidewalks and called it art. His Instagram was filled with anniversary posts, weekend road trips, and captions about my queen. Poor man. He thought he was building forever, not starring in a cautionary tale. Now, most wives might have stormed into their husband's office, hurled some choice words, maybe a shoe, and demanded answers. Not me. I've spent years learning how to make people notice a message, how to craft a reveal so unforgettable you couldn't look away. Dorian and Simone wanted to play house.
Fine.
I'd set the stage. Their pattern was simple. Every Thursday at 12:30, they met at an upscale spot downtown, the Meridian. I knew because I'd followed them twice. Don't judge me. Desperate women do desperate research. I watched them sit in their little corner booth, him sipping whiskey neat like he was a big shot, her sliding in with dresses priced higher than my car note. They laughed. They touched hands under the table like teenagers. That's when it hit me. If they wanted to play lovers in public, then public was where I'd end it. But first, I needed Khalil. I studied Khalil's profile like I was prepping for a client pitch. He worked at a boutique agency just 10 minutes from my office. His specialty? Branding and identity. The irony wasn't lost on me. His wife was busy destroying hers. So, I crafted an email. Polished, professional, harmless. Hi Khalil, I'm Naima Caldwell, Director of Marketing at L&B. I'm looking for a designer for a new campaign. I'd love to discuss over lunch. Nothing suspicious there. Atlanta was built on lunch meetings. And the kicker? I suggested the Meridian. Thursday, 12:30.
It was perfect.
I wasn't just planning a confrontation. I was setting a stage where their secret would meet its audience. Dorian thought he was the director of this little affair. But honey, I was about to show him who really runs production. When Khalil replied within 2 hours, eager, polite, clueless, I almost felt guilty. Almost. His email radiated innocence. Would love to meet. I've heard the Meridian has a great business lunch vibe.
Sweet, blind man.
The business vibe was about to turn into a battlefield. Meanwhile, at home, Dorian was suddenly showering me with forehead kisses and roses, as if Hallmark could erase betrayal. Just because, he said when I asked about the bouquet. 12 years of marriage, and suddenly this man discovers romance? Please. Guilt has a smell, and it reeks of overpriced roses. That night, he told me about an interior designer who'd been staging a property he was showing. He described her touches, soft lighting, warm accents, like he'd been hypnotized by mood lamps. I nearly laughed wine through my nose. He was practically confessing, just without names. Oh, really? I asked, playing dumb. Maybe we should hire her. The way his eyes darted, the stammer in his voice, it was better than Netflix. By then, my plan was locked. I spent nights gathering intel on Khalil, on Simone, on every curated caption she'd ever posted about living authentically. Authentic, my ass. She was living on stolen time and somebody else's vows. The night before the showdown, I lay awake rehearsing every possible outcome. Would Dorian deny? Would Simone spin lies? Would Khalil crumble or rage? I had answers prepared for all of it. The one thing I wasn't prepared for? Feeling almost excited. Revenge has its own electricity. And by sunrise, I was fully charged. Just because, he said when I asked about the bouquet. 12 years of marriage, and suddenly this man discovers romance? Please. Guilt has a smell, and it reeks of overpriced roses. That night, he told me about an interior designer who'd been staging a property he was showing. He described her touches, soft lighting, warm accents, like he'd been hypnotized by mood lamps. I nearly laughed wine through my nose. He was practically confessing, just without names. Oh, really? I asked, playing dumb. Maybe we should hire her. The way his eyes darted, the stammer in his voice, it was better than Netflix. By then, my plan was locked. I spent nights gathering intel on Khalil, on Simone, on every curated caption she'd ever posted about living authentically. Authentic, my ass. She was living on stolen time and somebody else's vows. The night before the showdown, I lay awake rehearsing every possible outcome. Would Dorian deny? Would Simone spin lies? Would Khalil crumble or rage? I had answers prepared for all of it. The one thing I wasn't prepared for? Feeling almost excited. Revenge has its own electricity. And by sunrise, I was fully charged. Thursday arrived. Dorian dressed sharply, humming like life was sweet. Big day? I asked, smoothing my blazer. Just a couple showings, he said, kissing my forehead again. The lies rolled off his tongue smoother than his cologne. At 11:45, I pulled into the garage across from the Meridian. I'd chosen my armor carefully. Navy blazer, crisp blouse, heels that said authority. Not a scorned wife, an executive. Inside, I requested the reservation. Table for Naima and Khalil. The hostess led me to a seat with a perfect view of the cheater's favorite booth. Empty for now, but not for long. I ordered sparkling water, scanning the lunch crowd, suits discussing deals, ladies who lunch comparing handbags. They had no idea they were about to witness theater. At 12:25, Dorian walked in. He slid into the booth, checking his phone like a man waiting for salvation. A minute later, Khalil arrived. Taller than I expected, with a smile that carried trust like currency. He shook my hand firmly. Thank you for meeting me. My wife swears this place has the best business lunches. Oh, she'd been here all right. Just not for business. And then Simone arrived. Simone swept in like she owned the room. Cream dress, gold jewelry, curls bouncing with practiced ease. She had that glow of a woman who thought she was untouchable. Dorian's face lit up so bright I wanted to throw a napkin over it. They greeted each other with a hug that lingered too long.
Sat down.
Whispered. Played footsie. The usual script. Khalil followed my gaze. Wait, is that? I kept my tone calm. Your wife. He nodded slowly. Confusion clouded his eyes, but his hand twitched like he wanted to wave. I touched his arm. Before you do, can I ask how long y'all been married? 5 years in June. Why? Because the man she's sitting with? That's my husband. The color drained from his face. He looked at the booth, back at me, then back again. His lips parted, but no sound came out. Finally, he whispered, You're saying? They've been meeting here every Thursday. For weeks. It was the moment he realized the foundation under his life was crumbling. I'd seen that look before, in my own mirror. I leaned closer. You deserve to know. And they deserve an audience. His jaw tightened. He sat straighter. So what now? I gestured toward the booth, where Simone was laughing at something Dorian said, hand grazing his. Now we introduce ourselves. We rose together, a united front of the betrayed. Each step toward them was heavy with adrenaline. My pulse pounded like a drumline, but my face stayed cool. This was my stage, my performance. Dorian noticed me first. His smile evaporated. The whiskey glass trembled in his hand. Simone followed his gaze, eyes widening when she saw me. And then Khalil. If guilt had a face, it was hers in that moment. I slid into their booth without invitation, forcing them to scoot. Well, what a surprise. Khalil remained standing, his height shadowing the table, his silence more threatening than words. Dorian, I said sweetly, this is Khalil. You know, Simone's husband. Khalil, meet Dorian. My husband. The air thickened. Conversations at nearby tables quieted, curiosity turning the entire restaurant into our witness stand. Simone stammered, Khalil, I can explain. Oh, please. I cut in. We're all dying to hear. The trap was sprung. Now came the unraveling. Dorian finally found his voice. Naima, what are you doing here? Having lunch, I replied smoothly. Funny, I thought you were showing a house today. He blinked, grasping for lies. This is the client meeting. Simone's eyes darted, her brain scrambling for cover. Yes, exactly, a client meeting. Khalil's laugh was humorless. That's interesting. Because last week, Simone, you told me you were meeting a female client about her master bedroom redesign. The table went silent. Dorian coughed on his drink. Simone's face flushed crimson. Oh, so the master bedroom was part of your consultation? I asked, venom sweet in my tone. How professional. Simone shook her head desperately. It's not what you think. Really? I said. Because what I think is that you've been fucking my husband while lying to your own. What I think is you're a fraud in Kashmir. And what I know is you've been doing this for 6 weeks minimum. Khalil dropped into his seat like gravity had tripled. His eyes glistened, betrayal cutting deeper than shock. Around us, the restaurant hushed. Our pain had become their matinee. Perfect. Just as I planned. Let's discuss this privately, Dorian muttered, face beet red. Oh no, I said firmly. You chose this restaurant for your little affair. It's only right the finale happens here too. Simone reached across to touch Khalil's hand, but he jerked away. Don't, he hissed. I leaned back, savoring the silence stretching like taut wire. Congratulations. You've managed to wreck 2 marriages in 1 lunch hour. Efficiency at its finest. Khalil's voice cracked. How long? They won't say, I answered. But my research says 6 weeks. Thursdays. This booth. Simone buried her face in her hands. Dorian stared at the table like maybe it would open and swallow him whole. Khalil stood abruptly. I need air. He strode out, leaving Simone crumbling in her seat. I looked at them both, these 2 architects of destruction. You should know something. Secrets don't last. Lies rot from the inside.
And today?
You're rotten in daylight. I stood, smoothing my blazer. Enjoy the check. Walking out felt like shedding weight I didn't know I carried. Outside, I found Khalil leaning against the wall, his world visibly splintered. He met my gaze with something startling, respect. You planned this, he said quietly. I nodded. They made choices in public. I just brought the truth into the same light. Khalil exhaled, long and heavy. And now, they get to figure out if their little affair was worth it. And we get to start breathing again. 8 months later, I was in my new office, sipping coffee. My house had been redecorated. Yes, by a designer, but not Simone. Dorian had moved out 3 days after the confrontation. The divorce wrapped up last month. When judges see receipts of infidelity, property division gets real simple. He rented some sad studio downtown, still trying to play 25 at 41. He left me voicemails, half apologies, half accusations. One said, Naima, what you did was cruel. Public humiliation? That's on you. I saved it. Every time I need a laugh, I replay his attempt to make himself the victim. Simone? She skipped town 2 weeks after that lunch, whispering something about a career opportunity in Portland. Translation: couldn't stand the smoke after setting fire. But Khalil? That man surprised me. He called 2 weeks later, not to blame, but to thank. He told me Simone's cheating wasn't the first betrayal, just the loudest. She'd spent years dismantling his confidence, convincing him his photography business was a hobby, mocking his ambitions, isolating him. She didn't just cheat with her body. She starved his soul. Listening to him, I realized our marriages were mirrors. Dorian wasn't as calculating, just selfish and cowardly. But pain is pain, no matter the flavor. At first, Khalil and I met for coffee, talking strategies, lawyers, custody of pets, dividing furniture, the battlefield of divorce. But slowly, the conversations shifted. We talked about art, music, food trucks, the small joys our spouses had dimmed. And somewhere in those conversations, laughter returned. Real laughter, the kind that surprises you because you'd forgotten how it feels. 6 months later, he joined my firm as head of visual content. His photography gave our campaigns a soul we'd been missing. Clients noticed. Revenue jumped. But more than that, Khalil glowed. Confidence returned to his posture, his eyes. Watching him heal was like watching sunrise after months of gray. I didn't expect anything beyond friendship. But friendship has a way of blooming when watered by truth. By the time Dorian relocated to Chicago, chasing some job and probably some 20-something, Khalil and I had built something steady. Not a rebound. Not trauma bonding. Something deliberate.
Grown.
Last month, we signed papers on a new house together. 3 bedrooms, plenty of light, a studio for his photography, and an office for me. We hosted our first dinner party there, laughter bouncing off walls that carried no lies. No secrets. Sometimes I sit back and marvel. My life cracked open, yes. But out of the rubble came something unplanned and beautiful. And when people ask me if I regret exposing Dorian and Simone so publicly, I say no. Not for the humiliation, it wasn't about revenge, not entirely. It was about refusing to be gaslit into silence. About standing in truth so tall it couldn't be ignored. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't slashing tires or burning clothes. Sometimes the best revenge is rebuilding stronger. Khalil once told me, Simone never wanted me to shine. I took his hand and said, then shine so bright she sees it from Portland. And together we do. The memory of that lunch at the Meridian is still sharp, though. The hush that fell over the room, the clinking glasses silenced, the way everyone leaned closer without moving an inch. It felt like church and theater combined. I replay it sometimes, not out of bitterness, but as a reminder. That moment was my line in the sand, my refusal to shrink. Dorian thought he could live 2 lives, one in daylight, one in shadows. Simone thought curated captions about authentic connections made her righteous. But when truth walked in, they crumbled.
And I stood.
Funny thing is, I don't hate them anymore. They're just small, trapped in their own cycles. Let them chase whatever scraps of validation they can find. My focus? Building. Living. Loving in ways that don't feel like bargaining. The other night, Khalil and I sat in our backyard, string lights glowing, jazz humming from a speaker. He handed me a glass of wine and said, 8 months ago, I thought my life was ending. I smiled. 8 months ago, it was just beginning. That's the real plot twist. What I thought was destruction turned out to be renovation. Sometimes friends ask if it was worth it, the public exposure, the confrontation. Wouldn't it have been easier to just leave quietly, they say. Easier? Maybe. But silence protects the guilty. Public truth sets you free. Dorian once accused me of being calculated. He wasn't wrong. I calculated every angle of that showdown. Because women like me, we don't get the luxury of chaos. We plan. We strategize. And when we strike, it's surgical. Simone built her brand on illusions, so it felt fitting to dismantle her illusion in front of strangers. She wanted applause. She got gasps. And the best part? I didn't raise my voice. I didn't throw wine. I didn't lose myself. I just laid truth on the table like a receipt.
Calm.
Final. Because in the end, revenge isn't about rage. It's about clarity. About making sure the people who tried to break, you can never mistake your silence for weakness. Khalil tells me I scare him sometimes, in a good way. I tell him, don't worry. My sharpest edges aren't for you. He smiles, takes my hand, and we both know we survived hell. And hell has nothing left to teach us. One rainy afternoon, Khalil showed me an old photo, him at 20, camera slung around his neck, eyes bright. This, he said, is who I used to be before Simone. I traced the edges of the photo with my thumb. And who are you now? He looked at me, serious. A man who finally feels seen. That's what betrayal steals most. It makes you invisible. It convinces you that your needs, your dreams, your joy don't matter. That you should settle for crumbs when you deserve the feast. But sitting across from Khalil, I realized we'd given each other back our reflections. He reminded me I wasn't just a wife or a strategist. I was a woman capable of demanding joy. I reminded him that his art wasn't a hobby. It was brilliance waiting to be displayed. This fall, his photography will hang in a downtown gallery. I'll be there, front row, clapping until my hands sting. And when the lights dim, he'll look out into the crowd and see me. Always me. That's the kind of partnership you can't fake. The kind cheaters never understand. Because it isn't built in shadows. It's built in light. Sometimes I wonder what Dorian tells people about me now. Maybe he says I was cold or calculating. Maybe he calls me dramatic. Let him. His words can't touch me anymore. What I know is this. I refuse to be erased. I refuse to let my pain be a secret. I turned betrayal into blueprint, heartbreak into foundation. And I think about Simone too. Maybe in Portland, she tells people she left for love, for opportunity. Maybe she pretends she wasn't exposed. But she'll never escape the truth. It'll haunt every smile she fakes, every caption she posts. Meanwhile, I sit in my kitchen, sunlight pouring across new countertops, laughter echoing through rooms that once held silence. Khalil's photos hang on the walls, images of strength, resilience, beauty. Proof that broken things can still create art. Sometimes the best stories aren't about the villains at all. They're about the survivors who refuse to stay broken. 8 months ago, I thought my life was over. 12 years wasted, vows shredded, trust demolished. But looking back now, I see it wasn't an ending. It was an unveiling. Dorian's betrayal didn't destroy me. It revealed me. And Simone's lies didn't dim Khalil. They sharpened him. Now, mornings in our home smell like coffee and fresh paint. Our nights end with laughter instead of suspicion. When Khalil works in his studio, light bouncing off his camera lens, I sit nearby and marvel at how far we've come. There's no pretending here. No secrets. Just two people choosing each other, fully awake. And the irony? If Dorian hadn't strayed, if Simone hadn't schemed, Khalil and I might never have found one another. Pain cracked us open, but love poured in. So no, the best revenge isn't payback. It isn't humiliation. It's standing taller in the ruins, refusing to bend, and building something so beautiful the past becomes irrelevant. Who would have thought betrayal could lead to rebirth? I did. The moment I walked into the Meridian and chose truth over silence, I was already free. Thanks for watching. Please like, drop a comment, and subscribe for more stories.